up, folks? Sean the Average Angler coming at you with another great video. Today we're going to touch a little bit on my experience from the weekend, what I learned, and what adjustments we're going to make moving towards next week. Now, if you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button down below. Join the channel. Love to have you. Thanks for stopping in and watching today. If you can, watch through the whole video. It really helps with the algorithm to get the video out, spread it around, okay? All right, so for those of you that don't know, we'll rehash really quick. I had 6 bites. I put none in the boat. Okay, fishing was actually really tough. The bites came kind of scattered. The fish are in a little bit of a funk. Not seeing them on the graph, not seeing them on the forward facing, really having to fish some structure where I anticipate they should be. And hey, sure enough, I got some bites there, okay? Actually, some really good bites in a few of those areas. What I was doing was fishing a jig. I tried a drop shot, and I threw an underspin. Not really a whole lot of different things. I thought a lot about it, and this area that I discovered, I really want to probe more. Fishing a jig out there, while it will work, may not be the optimal way to do it. Okay, and this is a big flat, about the size of 2 football fields. And in said flat, there's a lot of hard rock areas. Okay, you can feel it with the jig when you bump up against the rock. But you're still covering a lot of water that is random, if you will. And like I said, you can't see anything on the forward facing as far as the rock or fish. But they were there. And my buddy caught a couple, and I had a few bites that I missed. There's 2 ways that I really like to probe that type of stuff. Okay, one's going to be with a crankbait. Okay, in this instance, it's 22 to 26 feet deep. So I am going to use one of my OSP Magnum EX DRs. Okay, my preferred way to probe that depth is going to be the OSP Mag EX DR. That's one way. Okay, they come in a lot of colors. It's pretty much, but there's a lot of other ones you could do it with. This one happens to be a 6 cents custom painted model, factory model. And then this one is a Spro Little John DD. The reason I'm going to pick that OSP is because it dives really well, and it doesn't work you out. You see the bill is a little more, it doesn't look as wide, even though it might be as wide. This bill just tends to dive really fast, and it doesn't kick your butt, for lack of a better term. Now, another option I have is there's a Duo Realis G87. Okay, that dives pretty good. Again, the bill's not overly wide. Dives a little easier than some of the others, but you can use any deep diving crankbait you want. The idea with me is I like to get it down and into the strike zone as quick as possible. I don't know anything else that dives as quickly as that OSP. Okay, I've watched it on the forward facing, and I mean, it gets down to 28 feet quick. And that's the other thing. The OSP dives to depths that it says without having to necessarily use super light line or reel it really fast and just beat yourself up. I want that bait to get down there and bounce around, deflect off rocks, try to trigger a strike. Okay, the crankbait's going to allow me to do that quickly. It's also going to tell me where some of this stuff is. If I find an area, and you're going to feel it with the crankbait, if I find an area that has a cluster of rock, maybe I can't see it on the forward facing, but I can feel it with the crankbait, then I'm going to probe it with the good old ball and chain. And this one happens to be a very simple one to rig up. It's called the Carolina Keeper. You just put them on there, you pinch them with a pair of pliers, the hole opens up, you slide them on, and then they're adjustable. So kind of cool in that aspect. But I'm going to probe it with a Carolina rig. Now, I know that Carolina rig's not a lot of people's most popular method of fishing, but I want to say, number one, the Carolina rig you can actually cover water with pretty quickly. Yes, it's a bottom bouncing bait. it doesn't mean you have to fish it slow, okay? I can fish way faster with that Carolina rig than I can with, say, a jig. Now, there's a lot of ways to fish it. And if you think back to when you first started fishing, most of us started the same way, right? Most of us, not everybody, but most of us probably started dragging a 7-inch ribbon tail worm or some sense of a worm. That's typically, I think, how the majority of people start bass fishing. Well, it's a very effective way to get bit and catch fish. The Carolina rig, as you stop, let it settle, that bait's gonna settle down to the bottom. And then I just pick it up and pull it into the next zone. So figure maybe you're moving it 6 to 8 feet at a time, depending on how long of a rod and how much of a rod sweep you want to put into it. And then let that bait settle, because every time you pick it up, you're pulling it up, and let that bait settle back down to the bottom again. It's a very unique fall in that most of the time, this time of year, when I'm fishing a Carolina rig, I'm fishing it in deeper water. In the spring, I will use the Carolina rig in shallow water. But this time of year, I'm using it in deeper water. Like I said, 22 to 26 feet is what I want to use it in. Now, you saw on there, I have the Rage Bug. Okay? Good old Strike King Rage Bug. For baits, you can use just about anything you want. Anything that's confidence-wise for you. And I had a friend, Timus was his name. Timus has passed on a few years ago. But Timus, when I met him, Timus, all he did was split shot a Senko. I like to use the Dinger because it's a little slower falling, and on a Carolina rig, when I get it up off the bottom, I'd really like it to fall just a little bit slower. I don't want it to fall to the bottom really fast. But Timus had so many fish over 9 pounds. That's because it is a phenomenal way to get bit. Dinger, Senko, the Fat Packs, Fat Bats, whatever you choose. I'm going to use the Fat Bats or a Yum just because they're a little slower falling. The Fat Bat's pretty close to a Senko. Now, probably one of the most popular baits for a Carolina rig is a lizard. I don't use the lizard. I will go to that mid-size brush hog. However, the baby brush hog is probably one of the greatest Carolina rig baits ever made. Now, we're talking about getting bit here, guys. We're talking about tough days when we're struggling. The Carolina rig can be a great way to find a bite. And I think if you start doing this, the next thing you know, it's going to become a staple in your arsenal. One of my faults is I go out to the local lake. I like to think I know what's going on and what I need, and I only bring 6 rods. Well, unfortunately, that leaves you in a position sometimes where, hey, you were wrong, and I talked about tying on a Carolina rig, but never did it. I just have a funny feeling it's going to be a big producer. Okay, a couple other baits that are really, really good on a Carolina rig. The Yamamoto Creature. Okay, it's just a good assortment of things. It's got the kick and claws. It's got tube type tassel tail. And I've found when you get in a body of water where they really like these, they really like these. There's not a whole lot of mistaking. Now, that said, they don't seem to like them everywhere. Could be that day, could be that time of year, could just be the fish in that lake don't like them. It's a pretty big profile bait. Now, another one would be the good old Cowboy by Yamamoto. Another pretty big tails kicking there. The body's not really big. You got to remember, early on I mentioned that I was getting bites on a jig. I just didn't feel like it was the optimal bait for where I was fishing. So we're making an adjustment. This is a better way to probe that water. All right, another really good one is this here. This is a Zoom Z-Craw. This color is huckleberry. Really kind of a really cool color. Kind of a green pumpkin on one side there and kind of a violet on the other side. So a lot like a PB&J, just different tones of the colors. But this bait moves a lot of water. It's zoomed, so it's going to be a little bit more buoyant than the salt impregnated Yamamoto's. When I'm fishing a Carolina rig, Zoom is probably my favorite all-around company for Carolina rig baits because the plastic's a little bit tougher. It's not as heavily salted. Another bait that's really good is the Zoom Speed Craw. I think it's called the Ultra Vibe Speed Craw. It's a little bigger. I have some, but I don't know exactly where they're at. A Speed Craw here. So it's similar to this, but a little different, okay? These make a really good Carolina rig bait. So the Carolina rig is inexpensive to fish because you can use, mine has a tungsten weight on it, but there is no reason, and typically if I'm fishing it in a tournament, I am going to a 3/4 ounce to 1 ounce lead bell sink, egg sinker, a bead, a swivel to my leader, and a hook. One thing I will say about the Carolina rig is the smaller hook you can get away with, the better. You're gonna let that bait do more of its natural action that way. So if you can use a 3/0 and a baby brush hog, you have a fantastic Carolina rig bait. Now, if you get around places with drop-offs, ledges, a Carolina rig is phenomenal. And you're still gonna probe with the same two baits, right? Deep crank, Carolina rig. Great way to cover water, find those fish, and then I'll tell you, those lazier fish that aren't eating the crankbait, they're not reacting, a lot of times they will eat that slower, fluttering down Carolina rig bait. Nobody likes getting skunked. It's been a long time since I've gotten skunked, and it doesn't sit well with me. And I think the worst part about it is, all this week going to work, I have to freaking, in my head, it's like, you got to go redeem yourself. You got to go redeem yourself. And it just makes the week drag by slower, okay? And if you read some of the comments on the videos, there are guys that swear by the Carolina rig. And those of you that don't want to fish it, I don't really understand why not. If the idea is to go out and catch fish, this is a great way to catch fish. Okay, when I was learning, I did the split shot, okay? Quarter, or I don't know what size it was. A couple big split shot on there, and baby brush hog, Senko, boom, we were rolling. This is just a inflated split shot rig. We've moved over to a bait casting reel. Got a nice 7'5" heavy action casting rod. I got 15-pound Berkley big game here. This is iRod's Magic Stick. This is in the fiber series. It is their least expensive series they have. Berkley Big Game, probably one of the least expensive, dependable lines on the market. And then your hook, your weight, it's very simple, very effective, very inexpensive. When you're fishing a Carolina rig and you drag, reel up the slack, you want to stay in touch with your bait, but I like to get it just a little bit of sag in the line coming off the tip. So I don't want to hold it completely tight. What happens when they bite it on a Carolina rig is they will grab it and they'll keep moving. So you'll see your line starting to go taut. Well, when that happens, reel down and set. And you just do a sweep set. So out to the side and sweep. Reel at the same time, because sometimes they're coming towards you. But this is a great way to catch fish, guys. Nothing would make me happier than to hear successive guys catching more fish on a Carolina rig. And you guys in ponds, it's a phenomenal way to fish ponds. You still got some slack, so that bait's gonna slow fall, but you got the weight to throw it out there farther and get it into some places that you might not be able to get it into with some other baits, okay? Thanks for watching. I'm Sean the Average Angler. We'll see you on the next one.